You're standing at the edge of a waterhole somewhere in East Africa. It's around 2 million years ago, give or take. You're roughly 4.5 feet tall. You weigh maybe 90 pounds. You have no claws. No venom. No armor. Your top running speed, which you will absolutely need, is somewhere around 12 miles an hour on a good day, on flat ground, without the panic response that's currently flooding your system with cortisol and making your legs feel like they belong to someone else. Now look across the waterhole. There's a short-faced bear on the other side. It weighs over 1,000 pounds and can run at 30 miles an hour. There are 2 species of saber-toothed cat in the regional ecosystem. Deadliest, a leopard-sized ambush predator that paleontologists believe specialized in hunting hominins, is somewhere in the acacia scrub behind you right now. You almost certainly don't know that yet. And in the shallow water to your left, there's a crocodile that has been completely motionless for 40 minutes. You are not, by any conventional biological metric, equipped to survive this environment. And yet here you are. And here we are. Which means something happened between that waterhole and now that requires a real explanation, not the comfortable version we usually tell ourselves, but the actual, specific, sometimes brutal answer. Most people, when they think about how early humans survived, reach for a single answer. We got smart. We made tools. We used fire. And all of that is true, in the way that saying, a bridge holds because of its materials, is true, technically accurate and completely insufficient for understanding how the thing actually works under load. The real story of human survival against the megafauna of the Pliocene and Pleistocene is stranger, more collective, and more psychologically revealing than the "big brain saves the day" narrative allows for. Because the cognitive upgrades came slowly. The predators were there first. And for an enormous stretch of our evolutionary history, the gap between what our ancestors could do and what was trying to kill them was not closed by intelligence alone. It was closed by something older. And understanding what that something was changes how you think about human nature in ways that go well past the prehistoric. Start with the thing that almost no one wants to say plainly: for most of the time our lineage has existed, we were not hunters. We were prey. This isn't a controversial claim in paleoanthropology anymore, but it hasn't filtered into the popular understanding of human origins yet. The man the hunter narrative, the idea that early hominins were primarily aggressive, tool-wielding predators who carved out ecological dominance through superior hunting, took hold in the 20th century and it's been dying slowly ever since. What replaced it, driven by fossil evidence from sites across southern and eastern Africa, is considerably more humbling. Researchers at Tel Aviv University, particularly the work of Mickey Ben-Dor and Rand Barkai published in the early 2020s, have made the case that for roughly 2 million years, from the emergence of Homo erectus through most of the Middle Pleistocene, our ancestors occupied a mid-tier ecological position. They consumed large amounts of fat and protein, yes. But the evidence increasingly suggests they obtained much of it through scavenging rather than primary hunting. Percussion marks on animal bones from sites like Oldoway Gorge and Dakika in Ethiopia show hominin tool marks overlapping with, and in some cases beneath, carnivore tooth marks. The sequencing matters. Carnivore first, hominin second. You don't get to the carcass until the lion is done with it. Now hold that image against the predator roster of Pleistocene Africa. Alongside Dinophelus, which fossil evidence from the South African site of Swartkrans directly associates with Australopithecus remains bearing big cat bite patterns, there was Megantyrion, another saber-toothed cat probably capable of killing prey several times its own body weight. There were giant hyenas, Pachycrocuta, with bone-crushing jaw pressure exceeding anything alive today. There were crocodilians larger than any modern species. And perhaps most unnerving, there were giant eagles. The Haast's eagle of New Zealand, which went extinct only around 1400 CE, had talons the size of tiger claws and could strike at speeds approaching 50 miles an hour. Similar large raptors operated over African grasslands during periods when early hominins were small-bodied and poorly defended. The crowned eagle today, much smaller than its extinct relatives, still occasionally takes human children. So how did you survive at the waterhole? The first answer, and it's the most underrated one, is that you didn't go alone. Collective vigilance is the oldest human defense strategy, and it's more sophisticated than it sounds. Research on modern hunter-gatherer groups and on our closest primate relatives documents something called predator inspection behavior, individuals in a group actively approaching a potential threat together rather than fleeing individually. There's a mathematical logic to it. A predator optimized for ambush loses most of its advantage when the prey detects it and faces it collectively. The element of surprise, which is the core mechanism of most large feline kills, evaporates when you have 12 sets of eyes and 12 threat assessment systems running simultaneously. And early hominins, with their social group structures probably numbering between 20 and 50 individuals, were running a distributed early warning network every waking hour. But this isn't just about numbers. The specific cognitive capacity required for this kind of collective defense, tracking who in your group is watching which direction, communicating threat location without language, coordinating a response in real time, is genuinely demanding. Primatologist Robin Dunbar's work on group size and neocortex volume suggests that the social complexity required for large, stable primate groups drove brain expansion as much as tool use did. The brain didn't get bigger just to make spears. It got bigger, in part, to manage the politics and coordination of staying alive in a group that was itself the primary survival technology. Fire is the second answer. And the timeline here is more complicated than most people realize. The controlled use of fire by hominins is documented as far back as roughly 1 million years ago at sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, with more ambiguous evidence pushing possibly to 1.5 million years. What fire actually did for human survival against predators goes well beyond the campfire keeps lions away picture that most people carry. Yes, large carnivores avoid fire. That's real and it mattered. But the deeper effect was what fire did to the social and temporal structure of early human life. Fire extended usable daylight into the night. This is obvious in retrospect and almost never discussed in terms of its survival implications. Before fire, nighttime was the predator's optimal operating window. Dinofelis, leopards, lions, these are all preferentially nocturnal or crepuscular hunters. They evolved eyes calibrated for low light. Early hominins did not. The adoption of fire didn't just warm a campsite, it fundamentally disrupted the temporal advantage that predators held. It moved the hours of greatest danger into a zone that fire could partially neutralize. And it created the conditions for the nighttime social gathering, the fire circle, that anthropologist Polly Wiesner's research among the Jews/Hoansi of Botswana suggests was central to early human information sharing, coalition building, and the development of the kind of extended social trust that made large-scale collective action possible. In other words, fire didn't just scare predators away. It gave humans the night back. And what they did with that night, talk, coordinate, build the social fabric that supported collective defense, compounded the survival advantage across generations. The third answer is the one that's most counterintuitive, and it's the one that ultimately tipped the balance: persistence. Around 300,000 to 200,000 years ago, something shifted in the human relationship with the megafauna. The evidence for active, large prey hunting becomes substantially stronger. Spear technology appears at sites like Skaaningen in Germany. 8 wooden throwing spears, dated to roughly 300,000 years ago, found alongside the butchered remains of more than 20 horses. These aren't scavenging scenarios. These are hunts. And the specific form of hunting that anatomically modern humans eventually perfected was one that played directly to the single physiological advantage our lineage possessed over virtually every predator on the planet: endurance. Persistence hunting, running prey to exhaustion over distances of 10 to 30 kilometers in midday heat, is documented in historical accounts of San Bushmen in southern Africa and was still practiced into the late 20th century. The physiological basis for it is real and well studied. Humans are among the best long-distance runners in the animal kingdom, not because we're fast but because we sweat. We can dissipate heat through millions of eccrine sweat glands while running. Most quadrupeds cannot. A lion can hit 40 miles an hour in a sprint but will overheat and collapse if pushed through midday sun for more than a few kilometers. A human, in the right conditions, can run that lion down. Not by being stronger. Not by being faster. By being relentless in an environment where relentlessness, combined with heat, becomes a lethal weapon. This isn't a romantic metaphor. It's physiology. And it's the moment at which the prey species became the apex predator, not through some sudden cognitive breakthrough, but through the patient application of an endurance advantage that had probably existed for millions of years before anyone figured out how to weaponize it. Before we close the loop on all of this, there's a version of the human survival story that deserves some direct pushback, because it shapes how we think about our own nature in ways that aren't always accurate. The triumphalist reading of human prehistory, "We faced the megafauna, we outcompete them, we won," skips over a substantial amount of evidence that the relationship was far more reciprocal and costly than one implies. Across the Pleistocene, multiple hominin species went extinct. Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, the Denisovans, the Neanderthals, these were all intelligent, tool-using, fire-managing, socially complex beings. They didn't all make it. And while we can't attribute their extinctions directly to predation in every case, the idea that being smart and social was a guaranteed survival ticket is contradicted by the actual record. There's also the uncomfortable ecological postscript. When modern Homo sapiens spread out of Africa and into new continents over the last 60,000 years, the megafauna didn't fare well. The mammoths, the giant ground sloths, the cave bears, the Irish elk, roughly two-thirds of large mammal species in the Americas went extinct in close temporal association with human arrival. The prey that had no evolutionary experience with human hunters, that hadn't co-evolved alongside us, that didn't have the behavioral adaptations to avoid us, they were catastrophically vulnerable. The predator-prey relationship that shaped us for millions of years, and that we survived by the narrowest of margins, eventually reversed so completely that we became the extinction event. That's not a moral judgment. It's a data point about what the survival strategies we developed, the collective vigilance, the fire, the persistence, the social coordination, eventually produced once they were fully operational. Come back to that waterhole. 90 pounds. No claws. Dinophell is somewhere in the acacia behind you. What got you through it wasn't one thing. It wasn't intelligence in the abstract, or tools in isolation, or fire as a single technology. It was the compound effect of strategies that worked together and reinforced each other over timescales too long to intuit directly. The group watching all directions at once. The fire that gave back the night. The endurance that eventually turned the predator-prey dynamic inside out. And underneath all of it, the social architecture, the trust, the coordination, the shared information, that made all of those strategies executable in the first place. Here's what that actually means for thinking about human nature, separate from the prehistoric context. The traits that kept us alive weren't primarily individual traits. The lone genius with a better spear is a much later story, and even then, that genius needed people to teach, people to hunt with, people to bring the kill back to. The survival unit was always collective. The brain that got built in response to predation pressure got built for social complexity first and individual cleverness second. Which means when people tell you that humans are fundamentally competitive loners who cooperate only under duress, they're telling you a story that's almost perfectly backwards from what the evolutionary record supports. We didn't survive because we were ruthless. We survived because we were, under genuine pressure, extraordinarily good at being a group. If that framing, using old evidence to challenge assumptions about what humans actually are, is the kind of thing that keeps you watching, then you already know where you are. Subscribe, leave a comment with a prehistoric survival scenario you think we glossed over, and check the last video if you want the companion piece on what ancient humans actually feared when the fire burned low. Because that one starts exactly where this one ends. The waterhole. The dark. And everything waiting just outside the light.